to experiment with making a social studies video today. See how it goes. This is the first time I've used the app that goes along with our book here, so we'll try it out and see how it works. So lesson 1 here is about the land and water of the Southwest. We've moved on to the Southwest region. And as you figured out when you were working on your map and reading the introduction to this chapter, there's only 4 states that they include in the Southwest. So this would have been a fairly easy states and capitals quiz. But they're going to talk about what the land is like here, what some of the landforms are, and the bodies of water that they have. So what I'm going to try and do here, I think, is I'll have you every once in a while pause the video and read what's on that page. Then we'll talk a little bit about it, answer the questions, and then it will be your job to answer the questions at the end. So on page 254 is where lesson 1 starts. And on the picture across the top, it shows a canyon with a river flowing down through the bottom of it. And it says, water wears away the soil and rocks in the canyon. And that's something we talked about in one of our last chapters of science, how weathering and erosion over millions of years can make that happen. So why don't you go ahead and read what's on page 254 here. Pause the video for a second. And then once you've read this page, you can start it back up and we'll talk about what was on this page. So kind of an overview of what you read on this page here is that going from the eastern edge of this region, Oklahoma and Texas, further west through New Mexico and Arizona, the land looks quite a bit different. There's, in the part of Texas that's along the Gulf of Mexico, there's the Gulf Plain that extends up into Texas, and then Oklahoma's got, kind of the Great Plains coming down from the Midwest region, and Texas and Oklahoma are both pretty flat. So you've still got a lot of farming and ranching that get done in those 2 states, just like in the Midwest. And then when you move to New Mexico and Arizona, you've got the southern part of the Rocky Mountains that extends down into that area. And so it talked about the fact that those 2 states have a little bit more rugged terrain. And especially down in Arizona, you've got our American desert that we have there, so it's quite a bit drier there than it is over in Texas and Oklahoma. So you've got a number 1 down here that says, write why parts of New Mexico and Arizona are called the Basin and Range region. While that last paragraph told us, let's see if I can see if this works here, that New Mexico and Arizona have mountain ranges and basins in this area, which would make sense why they call it that. So I'll give you a second to write that down. Pause it if you need to. And then you've got this picture that goes across the bottom with a caption. It says, at the southern border of the region, the Rio Grande winds through Big Bend National Park. And that Rio Grande actually forms quite a bit of the border between, the whole border, I guess, between Texas and Mexico. You've got the Rio Grande River that runs through there and empties into the Gulf of Mexico. So why don't you go ahead and pause the video again, take time to read what's on this page, and then you can start it back up. Okay, so basically here it talked about some of the bodies of water, especially the rivers that run through this region. The 3 biggest ones being the Red River, the Rio Grande, and the Colorado River. The Red River forms the border between Oklahoma and Texas, and it's interesting because of the dirt that's in that area that has kind of a reddish tint. They call it the Red River because we drove over it this last summer when we went down to Texas, and it does have a reddish tint to it. It looks red, and so it makes sense that they would call it the Red River. The Rio Grande is a big one because it forms that border between Texas and Mexico. It does start up there a little bit further north, and it runs all the way through New Mexico also. And Rio Grande is Spanish. It says for Great River, so that name is actually Spanish. Then the Colorado River runs through northern Arizona there, and that river should sound familiar also because it's the river that runs through the Grand Canyon. So those are the three major rivers there, and as far as bodies of water, we've also got the Gulf of Mexico that borders Texas. But number 2 says, underline the names of states that border Mexico. Well, in this region, we can see where Mexico is underneath there. And we've got 3 of our 4 states that border there. I should have Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas underlined. We go to the next page. We specifically are talking about the Grand Canyon now, so go ahead and pause it, read this page, and then we'll talk about what's on here. Okay, so on this page, it talks about the Grand Canyon, which is one of the most famous landforms in the southwest region here, and you can see on the map it's up kind of in the northwest corner of Arizona there. And there's a picture of someone riding a mule down into the Grand Canyon on the bottom there, and you can kind of see the scenery beyond him. That's one thing you can do if you visit there, is pay to ride a mule down in there. But it says, you know, when you're looking at it, it seems to just go on forever and ever. It's more than 18 miles wide, 6,000 feet deep at its deepest point, so that's a little more than a mile deep. And you've got down in the canyon, it's pretty desert-like. It gets really hot down in there. The heat gets trapped. And so it says there's rattlesnakes that live down in there. But actually at the top, especially on the northern side of the canyon, it's very forested, quite a bit cooler up there because there's mountainous areas there which give it a little bit cooler temperatures. It says the Grand Canyon is also a World Heritage Site. There's 911 places on Earth that have earned this title to where it's one of the most famous landmarks on Earth, and because of that it's preserved. It gets lots of attention, lots of visitors. It's one of our natural wonders. Why don't you go ahead and pause and read this page. This should sound familiar because of science. And then we'll talk about what's on this page. So erosion was one of our science words from not this last chapter, but the chapter before, I believe. And it goes together. Remember, weathering and erosion go together. And it's the process where soil and rock get worn away. Sometimes it's by wind, by water, depending on what's in the area. And it says no one knows exactly how the Grand Canyon was formed because no one has been around on Earth that long, but scientists do believe, based on their studies, that erosion has played a major part in it. And obviously it took probably millions of years for this to happen. But it says, and that would be the Colorado River that caused that specific erosion, but it goes on to say rivers are not the only thing that cause that. It can also be caused by wind. And you've got a picture of Window Rock down in Arizona there, where there's no river near this, so they think that the erosion caused by wind is what formed this and carved this hole out of the rock there. It says rainwater can also cause it by washing dirt and soil away. But there's erosion taking place all over the place every day, it says. So number 3, we've got a cause and effect here, where we have to fill in the effect that happened because of this cause. And it says river water flows over rock. So one effect of that would be that erosion takes place. Pause it if you need to get that down. And we'll go to our next page. So go ahead and pause it and read what's on this page about the natural resources that can be found in the Southwest. And we'll talk about it. Okay, so what it talks about on this page is that one of the big ways they get natural resources in the Southwest, because there's not a ton of good farmland. There is some, but not a ton. Mining is a big industry there. It says Arizona is the leading producer of copper. There's lots of copper mines in especially southern Arizona and a little bit into New Mexico there. You can see on the map. It says some of the mines are dug underground and then others are open pit mines. And so what they do with those is instead of digging a tunnel underground to get to it, they pretty much just blast the surface with dynamite to make a big giant hole that they can dig it out of. So those are 2 different ways that they can mine it. And they use that copper in all sorts of ways. We've got copper pipes, we've got copper coins. They're used in pieces of computers, especially for this, like circuit boards and things like that inside your computer. But New Mexico and Arizona also have gold, silver, and coal mines, it says. And you can show, it shows, they've got gold bars, silver bars, and then the coal is those little carts. So mining, especially in New Mexico and Arizona, are very big industries where there's a little less farming and ranching than there would be over in Oklahoma and Texas. Another thing that's big, especially in Texas and the Gulf of Mexico, is oil refineries. And so you can see all those pictures of oil rigs down there. They even have several out in the Gulf of Mexico. And then there are some areas where they do farm as well as ranch, especially in the drier areas where it would be prairie grasses like the Great Plains. There would be more ranching than there is farming. So number 4 on this page says study the map and circle the symbols for oil and natural gas. Where is most of the oil in the Southwest found? So I'm supposed to go around and circle all of those symbols. So there's a couple up in northern Arizona and New Mexico, a couple natural gas ones in northern Oklahoma, and then I just keep going further south. There's a whole bunch of natural gas kind of going through the middle of Oklahoma and Texas, and then most of my oil symbols are down near the Gulf of Mexico. So that answers our question there. Where is most of the oil in the Southwest found? In and near the Gulf of Mexico. And finally, our last page. Go ahead and pause it and read about it's a little bit about the farmland, it looks like. So read that little paragraph, 2 paragraphs, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so this is a continuation kind of that resource map on the other page, where it talks about even though there's a lot of desert and mountains, we do still have farmland in this region. Arizona has cotton farms. Texas has more farms than any other state, mainly because it's so large in land size. And in Oklahoma, they would raise wheat, like we talked about, those kind of in the Great Plains where it's a little bit drier. And there's a lot of livestock that are raised in this area. Sheep, cattle would be the two biggest ones. So for number 5, it says, what conclusions can you make about the products made in the Southwest? So products that they make using the resources that they have, if you think about that for a second. Some things that they might make with, let's say, the sheep that they raise. Products could include wool from sheep, cloth from the cotton, or gasoline from the oil, would just be a few examples. So your job is to answer number 6 and 7 on this page here. It says write one fact and one opinion about the Grand Canyon. You can find a fact in the lesson here and write an opinion you might have about it. 2 answers there. And number 7, suppose you were moving to the Southwest from another country. Where would you want to live? Where in that region? And how would the landforms affect your decision? The mountains, the Grand Canyon, the rivers, the farmland. What in that would affect your decision of where to move to in the Southwest? So make sure you answer both parts.